Let's kick things off today with a question that sounds simple on the surface, but the answer really tells the story of a nation. Where do a country's laws actually come from?
You know, it's never just one big book or one single person. The real answer is, well, it's a lot more like a complex structure, with all these layers of history, authority, and tradition all working together.
It's not just a document, it's an entire system.
And in Kenya, the best way to visualize that system is as a pyramid of power. So, over the next few minutes, we're going to break this whole pyramid down piece by piece, starting right at the very top.
Right at the apex, the absolute peak of our pyramid, is the single most powerful source of law in Kenya, and that is the Constitution. Everything else sits below it and has to answer to it.
And this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It's the master blueprint for the entire country. It sets the rules of the game for literally everyone, from the highest levels of government right down to every citizen. Its authority is absolute.
The Constitution doesn't just imply its power, it spells it out loud and clear. This quote from Article 2 is basically the legal knockout punch. Any law that dares to contradict the Constitution is just void, gone. It is that clear-cut. So, when you get right down to it, the Constitution is juggling three massive jobs all at once. First, it creates the government. Second, it limits that government's power. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, it protects the fundamental rights of every single citizen.
Okay, let's move one layer down the pyramid. Here, we find the laws that are created directly by the people's elected representatives. We're now in the world of the legislator, which you probably know as Parliament.
Now, this is what most of us think of when we hear the word law, right? It's a formal, written rule that's been passed by Parliament. And in Kenya, that means both the National Assembly and the Senate are working together to create these statutes, which govern pretty much everything, from traffic rules to international trade. But an idea doesn't just magically become a law overnight. Oh no, it goes on a pretty tough journey. A proposed law, or a bill, is first published so the public can see it. Then it's debated in Parliament, pulled apart and examined by committees, and eventually voted on. And only after it's passed all those stages and gets the president's signature does it finally become the law of the land.
Now look, Parliament can't possibly write every single tiny rule for every situation. So what they do is, an act will often give a government minister or some other official body the power to fill in the details. Think of it like this. Parliament passes a law saying all cars must be safe, and then a minister writes the specific, detailed regulations about brake standards and tire pressure. That's the fine print.
All right. The next layer of our pyramid is a fascinating dive into legal history. Because of its colonial past, a huge chunk of Kenya's legal DNA comes directly from England.
This is a kind of law that wasn't written down in some big book by a parliament. Instead, it was built up slowly, case by case, decision by decision, by judges back in England. It's this organic system that's based on tradition and precedent, and it forms a major part of Kenya's legal foundation today.
But the common law was far from perfect. It could be incredibly rigid. I mean, if you filled out the wrong form, even by a little bit, your whole case could be thrown out. Justice was often painfully slow, and the only solution a court could usually offer was money, even when what you really needed was for someone to, say, stop dumping trash on your property.
So the harshness of the common law obviously created a big problem. It needed a fix. And that fix was a kind of parallel system designed to deliver fairness when the strict letter of the law was failing. It's called equity.
Equity basically acted as the court of conscience. Where the common law was rigid and stuck in its ways, equity was flexible. It introduced new solutions, like injunctions, which are court orders telling someone to stop doing something. The whole point was to achieve a just and fair result, not just blindly follow old procedures.
So let's move down to the base of our pyramid. This is where the law stops being just text on a page and becomes a living, breathing thing, shaped every single day in courtrooms and communities all across Kenya.
And this is where we really see that legacy of the common law in action. When a judge makes a decision, it's not just about that one case. The legal reasoning they use sets a precedent. It becomes a rule that lower courts have to follow in similar cases down the road. So in a way, judges are constantly interpreting, clarifying, and even shaping the law.
Now, to understand case law, you have to know this. Not everything a judge says is legally binding. Think of it like a math problem. The ratio decidendi is the final answer and the formula you use to get there. That's the core legal reasoning that other courts have to follow. Then you have the obiter dicta. Those are like the notes in the margin, the judge's other thoughts. They're persuasive, sure, but they're not the binding rule itself.
And finally, we reach the very foundation of the pyramid, where the law acknowledges that Kenya is a nation of incredibly diverse communities. So alongside all the formal court decisions, you have African customary law, which governs personal things like marriage and inheritance for many ethnic groups, drawing on centuries of tradition. And in the same way, Islamic law provides a framework for Muslims on similar personal matters. These aren't just footnotes, they are living legal systems and the bedrock of justice for millions of Kenyans.
And there we have it, the pyramid, complete. You've got the absolute power of the Constitution at the top, then the laws made by Parliament layered with the deep historical influence of English common law and equity, and the whole thing is built on this foundation of case law and the customs of the people.
So you see, this complex pyramid isn't just some dusty legal framework, it's a portrait of Kenya itself. It's a nation that's been built on history, empowered by its people, and is deeply rooted in diverse traditions. Which leaves us with one final thought. What does this unique blend of laws truly reveal about a nation's soul?